Anybody know the significance of number 424?
Yeah, palindrome.
What?
Palindrome.
It's a palindrome. What does that mean? It goes backwards and forwards?
Yep.
Far more significant than that. Far more significant than that. 424 is the highest batting average recorded in modern Major League Baseball history by Rogers Hornsby in 1924. So that is far more significant. And by the way, somebody had the audacity to compare the Eagles to the 85 Bears, which is, it just short of blasphemy. The Eagles beat a bunch of, like Special Olympics teams. The Bears, 85 Bears was a thing. Nobody's going to be talking about the Eagles in 2 years. Nobody's going to forget about the Eagles. The 85 Bears was a concept. I resent it. So he laughs. 424. Now that I got that out of my system. In Pasuk 33, it says like this: V'chiyiftach ish bor, when a man opens a pit, o ki yichre ish bor, or a man digs a pit, v'lo yechaseno, he doesn't cover it up. V'nofal shaba shor chamor, an ox or a donkey falls in. 424, middle of the page. Bala bor yishalem kesef yoshiv levolov, the owner of the pit has to pay. V'amesi yelo, and the dead body belongs to him. So there are all sorts of halachas here about how you calculate the damage. The point is, the Torah is saying that if you create a pit, if you dig a pit, you're responsible for it. So if you drop and it's for people as well. You drop a banana peel in public and somebody wipes out and he gets hurt, so you're responsible for it, number one. Number two, if you see something in the public, you have responsibility to move it. If you're walking along and you see a raw piece of fruit on the sidewalk, so have in mind I am fulfilling a Torah command and kick it aside. And not just, so it's there, so I may as well, I didn't put it there, so you're a person's responsible. That's the basic halacha over here. And here it's talking about damage to somebody else's animals. But at a deeper level, it means, if the commentaries say, what if you dig a pit and cause somebody else to stumble spiritually? That means you create a situation where somebody else can sin. Then you're responsible for what's happened to him. You're responsible for their comparisons to if he's an ox, which means he sins without any pleasure. The comparison of an ox, if an ox gores, he doesn't get any real pleasure. Or a donkey eats and damages only because he's looking to eat something. But at the end of the day, you cause somebody else to stumble for whatever reason. So Bala Bor Yishalem, then the guy the owner of the pit, the one who caused him to stumble, is the one who's responsible. The classic example in Jewish history was a king called Yeravam ben Nevat. Yeravam ben Nevat was the one who, when the Davidic kingdom was split, so it went to Dovid HaMelech had a son Shlomo, and then Shlomo had a son Rechavam. Rechavam became the king of two tribes, Yehuda and Binyamin, whereas Yeravam ben Nevat, who was a great man, he started out as a great man, he was given the 10 tribes of what's called Yisrael. So they were divided into two. There was Malchus Yehuda, Judea, and there was Malchus Yisrael. And Yeravam ben Nevat was the king over 10 tribes. And he was chosen by God to be this king through a prophet. But he, at a certain point, he realized, the Jewish people are going to abandon him. They're going to go up to Jerusalem, which is in the part of Judea. So he created 2 golden calves and had the Jews worship, idol worship. He is the classic example of somebody who sins and causes others to sin, and he loses his portion in the world to come. So a person has to be careful not to cause others to sin. Now, Yeravam ben Nevat actually erected these 2 golden calves and wouldn't let people go to Jerusalem and caused them to worship idols. We understand why the Torah is so severe about Yeravam ben Nevat. But the Gemara in Bracha says, if somebody eats food without making a bracha, let's say the way the Gemara puts it, you benefit from this world without bracha. You sit down and you take some food, you start eating. So the Gemara says, a person like that, number one, you're stealing from God. You're stealing from the Jewish people because you're preventing benefit to come down from heaven to the Jewish people. And you are a colleague of Yeravam ben Nevat. who caused others to sin. Well, I mean, it's fight man's words. What, 'cause I took a bite out of an apple without making a bracha? So what, I mean, what's therefore I'm like, Yeravam ben Avadu put up two golden. The answer is, yeah, well, you ate without a bracha and somebody may have seen you. Then what does he do? If he doesn't make a bracha, I don't have to make a bracha. Then when he doesn't make a bracha, his kids don't make a bracha. So now who's caused that chain of people who aren't making brachas, and goodness knows where it's going to end. I don't think the Gemara means it at that level, the first time you take you ate an apple and didn't make a bracha, but the Gemara is telling you that every little, we would relate to that as being a minor offense. Every minor offense has the potential to turn into something pretty major, because there could be some sort of chain reaction over here, and who knows where it's going to lead to. I remember I was once on a flight, I think it was a long flight, it was about a 5-hour flight. I think it was a California to New York flight. And there's a guy, I was sitting on the outside. There's a guy on the inside row, and on the inside by the window. And as soon as the plane took off, he went to sleep. And it was a red eye. So he slept for about 4 hours. He slept about 4 hours. And then he wakes up just as she's coming down the aisle where she saw you could sell, the flight attendant is selling these little breakfast kits. And I just remember I couldn't eat it was not kosher. And I just remember the guy looked at it and says, yeah, I'll take one. And so she gives it, he pays her and he takes it. He opened it up. I remember there's some crackers and some cream cheese or something. And, just started eating. And I was just looking at this guy thinking, what about Negelvasser? You just slept for 4 hours. You didn't make an Asher Yotzar. You didn't make Alan Tilas Yadayim. You didn't even go to the bathroom. And you didn't go to, you didn't even make a bracha. And just looking at the contrast, for a Jew, just to eat food, what does it take? I come home and I want to eat supper. Okay, so I'm going to have to wash. But I can't wash because I have to go to the bathroom. If you have to go to the bathroom, you're not even allowed to make a bracha. So you first go to the bathroom, then you come out and make an Asher Yatzar. Then you go and you wash, and by the time you get to the table, you starve to death. By the time you even get to the food, you basically dissolve. So, but you understand there's a reason for this. What it does is it creates restraint. You just walk in and just start helping yourself. Walk over to the refrigerator, grab a hunk of salami, and take a bite out of it, as we are wont to do when we're very hungry or looking for something to eat at midnight. Yeah, you have to, sit down, take like a mensch, go to the table, make a bracha. It's got to be calculated out. All of which creates a certain amount of self-control. It's all part. There's a method to this madness. It all works. It's all working. But here, the Torah is telling you have to be careful not to set a negative example. Okay, in Pasuk Hey, skip ahead now to 426. And this is very pertinent. This is very relevant to today. On the fifth line on page 426. Ki yaver ish sada okerem. I made a bracha before, by the way. You got to be really careful here. Ki yaver ish sada okerem. When a man sets a fire, v'shilach es bi'iro bi'ir b'serach, his fire burns in another field. Meitav sadeu meitav karma. Sorry. Pasuk, I read the wrong one. Ki seitzei eish umatzah kotzim. Kiavir ish is sadel kerem. That's not a fire. That's not talking about the fire. That's his animals is eating food in a different field. Pasuk Hey is the one I wanted to get. Kiseitze eshu matzah kotzim. When a fire goes out, leaves your property and it catches onto some thorns. V'nechal godash o hakama o asada, and then it goes in and burns somebody else's pile or it singes his field. Shalem yeshalem hamavir esa be'ira. The guy who set the fire is going to have to pay. That means if something, listen, but it wasn't my fault. I had a fire. What can I do? Yeah, well, it wasn't my fault either. Who's that? Somebody's like, why should I have to pay? You had a fire on your property. It burned my property. So, well, why should I be the one that takes the loss? You be the one that takes the loss. So it was your fire. I didn't start the fire. You started the fire. And even if it was your stove that spontaneously started the fire. But who's responsible? I'm not responsible. I'm certainly not responsible. Somebody's responsible for it. The Torah says you're responsible to control your property. And that's a general rule in liability, is that if you do something, even by accident, you're liable. It's not enough to damage somebody by accident and then say, oh, sorry, it was an accident. I'm sure it was an accident. Nobody said you're a Russia. If you did it on purpose, you'd be a Russia. But somebody's got to be liable. You are liable for it. You can't say, I couldn't control the fire. So I don't know if somebody started in Los Angeles. I don't know how those fires started. Do they know it? Or do they know if it was?
There's theories. There's several theories.
What is the most prevalent theory?
That it was a natural forest fire.
A natural forest. Well, I guess that isn't the prevalent theory. So there seems to be a machlokas. There we go. We're Jewish. It's a machlokas. Whatever it is.
Arson. It's
Like,
always arson.
I think it's arson too.
I'd say it's yeah. What you? Okay. Well. Okay. He clearly said arson. The what do you call it? Is that whoever? If it was arson, the guy threw a cigarette on and started a thing. Now this guy's responsible for all that property. He's responsible for everything. I had insurance to cover it. You understand? The Torah doesn't. I didn't mean for it to go that far. You have to control your fire. So the commentaries say, well, where is the fire that we have to control? It refers to anger. Anger is a fire. It burns like a fire. A person gets angry. And the Torah says, you get angry. A person gets angry. And people down there, there's an expression, I have anger. He has anger. I've got an anger issue. You don't have an anger issue. You've got a human being issue. Because human beings have anger inside them, and things can get us angry. And we have an obligation to control our anger. Anger is an urge. And like all other urges, a person has to control that urge. And a person can't come along and say, I can't control my anger. You have work on it. What do you think? It doesn't happen overnight. You shouldn't. Something has to be worked on. What if you're selfish? I can't control my selfishness. Work on it. So you have to work on not being a selfish person. There are ways to work on anger. There are ways to work on selfishness, ways to work on ego. It's got to be worked on. You can't do it. I get angry. He makes me angry. He doesn't make you angry. You allow your anger to dominate you. He makes me angry. A person is angry. There are 1,000,001 things to be angry about in life. Getting up in the morning gets me angry. I'm angry at my alarm clock as soon as I get up, so I hurl it against the wall. Then I get up, and there's no towel in the bathroom, so I'm angry now about that. Then I'm angry because somebody squoze the toothpaste incorrectly. Then I'm angry because the bus didn't come on time, and I'm angry when I get on the train, and I'm angry when I get to the yeshiva because I realize I'm in the yeshiva. So I'm angry. There's no end to it. Then I'm angry when I get home because supper isn't ready on time, and I'm angry at my kids, and I'm angry all the time. You're angry. What are you, a rapper? There's no end to this sort of thing. Therefore, you could pick up a gun and shoot people. There's no end to it. So the Torah says, control yourself. He's angry. Of course we're angry. Who doesn't get angry? Everybody has anger in them. We have to control it. You have to control it like you have to control anything else. And a person can't say, I can't control it. Nowadays, it's a very 21st century, I have anger. It makes it sound like it's not my fault. It came from somewhere else. I have anger. I mean, you have anger. He has an anger issue. He doesn't have an anger issue. He has a laziness issue that he's not willing to work on it. That's what it is. And he has an anger issue. There are 1,000,001 things. Get to be angry all day. The Gemara says somebody gets angry, you should view this person as if he's worshiping idols. Why? Because anger stems from ego. I'm not in control, and I want to be in control. That's ego. So work on it like anything else. We have to work. Obviously, a guy who's getting violent and throwing things around, so there's an emergency anger work that needs to be done. But everybody gets angry. Everybody who doesn't get angry. The question is what you do when you're angry. Okay, next one. In Perek Chav Beis Pasuk, I'm just moving quickly because these are Mishpatim has a lot of different halachas and a lot. I'm just trying to pick the ones that really apply to us on a regular basis. And where is it? Pasuk Perek Chav Beis Pasuk Yud Aleph. Okay. So the Torah here is talking about, pick it up from Pasuk Tes. Ki yitain isha re'el chamar oshor oseh v'chol behema lishmar. Page 428, fifth line from the top. When a man gives his fellow a donkey or an ox or a sheep or any animal to guard, umeis o nishbar o nishba ein roeh. The animal dies, or it's somebody captures the animal, or it's something out of his control. The animal nishbar, it breaks. How does he translate breaks? A better word for break. Animals don't break. What's the word? Or was broken, or was looted by somebody with a gun. Ein roeh. Shuas Hashem tia bein shnehem You have to swear that you didn't use the animal. We're talking over here about a shomer sachar, a paid watchman. I am paying you, like a shepherd, I'm paying you to watch my animals. You're not allowed to make use of them because you didn't borrow it. You're a paid watchman. If I give you if I tell you to watch my car and I pay you to watch my car, you can't drive the car. Driving the car makes you a borrower, which gives you a higher level of responsibility. I'm paying you as a watchman. So I'm paying you to guard my animal. Then the Torah says, if the animal is stolen or lost, then you do have to pay. That means a shomer sachar, a paid watchman, has a certain degree of responsibility. You are responsible because you're being paid. If you are an unpaid watchman, what's called? Anybody know what an unpaid watchman is called? Shomer chinam. A shomer chinam is an unpaid watchman. Then you're only responsible for negligence. If it's stolen or lost, you're not responsible. If I'm paying you to watch it, you have a heightened level of responsibility. Then, if it's stolen or lost, you have to pay. If it is an accident beyond your control, for instance, it was stolen by an armed robber, you don't have to give up your life to guard my animal. Or if it got hit by lightning, or if it died, or something beyond your control, then you are absolved. You don't have to pay. Okay. But if it was stolen or lost, you have to pay. Now, what's this got to do with us? I mean, first of all, on a very practical level, if somebody asks you to guard something, watch something, hey, do me a favor, watch my Gemara while I go do me a favor, keep it in your room for a couple of weeks while I go home. So if you're an unpaid watchman, the only time you actually, let's say it got stolen or lost, it's not your fault. If you took the Gemara and you left it out on the balcony and it rained and it ruined the Gemara, then that's negligence, you'd have to pay. But here the commentaries say that it's referring to us. We are paid watchmen by God. God has given us the Torah to guard and to watch. And if it's stolen or lost from us, then we're responsible. That means if we have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, and the mitzvah got stolen or lost, person overslept, so he didn't make it to binyan in the morning, or if a person forgot to bench, he left the table without benching. Okay, why did it happen? Why did it happen? To a certain degree, there's always an element of negligence, because if it was really important to us, it wouldn't be happening. If a person had an important business meeting, for instance, a board business meeting at 8 in the morning, or at 7:30 in the morning, where he's potentially going to be hired for a job that pays seven digits, I guarantee you he'll be at that meeting on time. And there aren't going to be any traffic jams, there's not going to be anything, because he'll leave the house at 5 in the morning to make a 20-minute drive just to make sure he's there. If a person has a shidduch opportunity to meet a girl who is the single daughter of a 93-year-old multi-billionaire who's on a respirator, I guarantee you he's going to get there on time. Nothing is going to stop him from getting on time. He's not going to let that opportunity. A person has an opportunity to do a mitzvah. Our problem, and I can include myself in this, we don't appreciate the value of a mitzvah. That's the problem. If we really appreciate what a mitzvah is, so sometimes, we let it slip through our fingers. If we really appreciate it, we would guard it. We would guard it more conscientiously. In the Chafetz Chaim, everybody's heard of the Chafetz Chaim. Say the Chafetz Chaim had a yeshiva. He had built. He was the administrator. He funded a yeshiva, and he had somebody named Rav Naftali Trupp was the Rosh Yeshiva. He was the one who gave the shiur. The Chafetz Chaim was the overseer of the entire project. But Rav Naftali Trupp was the one who gave the Gemara. We're talking about at a very high level to major. The
Chafetz Chaim was wealthy, right?
Correct, but the opposite.
Really
Not wealthy. He fundraised for the yeshiva, but he didn't have his personally. He lived in a hovel in Radin, what we would call a hovel, and he himself was not very wealthy, but he had a yeshiva that he maintained. Now, the Rosh Yeshiva was a man named Rav Naftali Trupp, and at a certain point, Rav Naftali Trupp became very, very sick. So the boys decided to take a collection for Rav Naftali Trupp. They went around the yeshiva. How much time from your life expectancy will you donate to our beloved Rosh Yeshiva? So one guy said, I'll give a month. Another guy said, I'll give a week. I'll give a day. I'll give whatever they were throwing around numbers. Not that I don't know that you could even do such a thing, but they thought they could. And apparently there is such a thing that is possible. I don't know exactly how to do it. And they all donated time that the Rosh Yeshiva, who was critically ill, should live longer. And after they all donated, they went to the Chafetz Chaim. And they asked the Chafetz Chaim to donate some time for Reb Naftali Trop. So Chafetz Chaim closed his eyes and he said, I'll donate a minute of my life expectancy. He said, a minute? A minute for the Rosh Yeshiva? Everybody else is donating a week, a month. The Chafetz Chaim said, the only reason you're throwing out those time spans is because you yourselves don't appreciate what you could accomplish in a week or a month or a year. I know what could be accomplished in even 1 minute of life. And if you know what you can imagine, you wouldn't toss it around just like, oh yeah, I'll give it away. The Chafetz Chaim obviously was making a point that in a minute, what a person could do in a minute, they had a court case. I read about a court case. A guy was accused of murder. So the defense attorney said there was only a 2-minute gap that he was out of sight. What could he have possibly done in 2 minutes? How could he possibly have killed him? So the prosecutor got up and he said, okay, I want to show you what 2 minutes is. And he said, I want everybody to be quiet. And he just took out a stopwatch, and the whole courtroom for 2 minutes didn't do anything. And after that, they saw what a span 2 minutes is, and they turned in a verdict of guilty. Because 2 minutes is a long time. 1 minute is a long time. 1 minute of learning Torah. You could do 1 minute of learning Torah. That's what the Chafetz Chaim. So we are a little bit careless with God's. That's why we're a shomer sachar. We're a paid watchman. We're going to get rewarded. We have to take the mitzvahs very seriously. There's another court case, by the way, where the jury turned in the foreman of the jury. The judge said, "What is your verdict?" They say, "Not guilty, sir." So he said, based on what grounds? He said, well, insanity. So the judge said, really, all 12 of you? I guess he had to be there. Then there was another case where there's a jury and there was one woman with 11 men. And they all said one thing and she said something else. And she said, well, if you guys wouldn't be so obstinate, we could all go home. I guess he had to be there too. Yeah, okay. Okay, now a bizarre mitzvah. Take a look at page 430. And it says 3 words, one of the shortest psukim in the Torah. Top of 430, second line. Michashefa lo sechaya. A witch must not be allowed to live. And from here we see, you didn't know that, Andrew? Witchcraft, how do you like that? The Torah says a witch must be executed. A woman who is somebody who is practicing, a practitioner of witchcraft is a capital offense. If there are witnesses, they are liable for the stoning penalty. Now, the first thing that you notice is that it talks in feminine form. Michashefa, a witch. A male witch is also, by the way, what is the correct word for a male witch? Oh, not a wizard. A wizard is a subcategory. That's what I wanted somebody to say. Good. No, you were right. It is a warlock. A male witch is a warlock. A wizard is a subcategory. Stop reading Harry Potter. So a warlock is the official term for a male witch, and he is also prohibited to practice witchcraft.
They had those too, right?
What's that?
They had warlocks and witches.
There were. So why does the Torah talk in the feminine form? Why does the Torah talk about a michashefa, which is, michashef is masculine. Michashefa, why does the Torah talk in the feminine? Anybody know? Why is the Torah talk in the feminine? What?
It's got to be teaching derech.
Teaching derech? The derech program you're talking about?
From Gemara.
It's teaching derech. Yeah, I thought you meant the derech program. No, no, you're confusing witchcraft with drugs. No, take a look at Rashi. I want you to see the words of Rashi inside. It's the right column of Rashi, 4 lines from the top. Michashefa lo sechaya, says Rashi. Everybody see it, right column, 430, right column, 4 lines from the top. Michashefa lo sechaya, says Rashi, elatumas bebezdin. She has to be executed in Bezdin. Ve'echad zecharim ve'echad nekevos. This applies to males or females. Ela shediber hakasuv behova. The Torah spoke in the commonly found scenario. Behova. In other words, when you think of witchcraft, what do you think of?
Witches.
You think of witches. You think of female witches. You know, the wicked witch of the west, the wicked witch of the witch of the west.
In the West.
The wicked witch of the west. Everybody's mother. My mother certainly, whenever she picked up the broom and it was time for us to clean up. Okay, the wicked witch of the west is here. That meant cleanup time, and in an unpleasant environment. That's what that meant. And so the concept of the witch. You'd see that through history. For example, in the Middle Ages, they had witch trials, and there was always a woman who was on trial. And then they had, what's that?
They were burned at the stake.
They were burned at the stake, and in the Salem witch trials, they used to strap them to a log and dunk them in water. Did you know that? If a woman was accused of being a witch, they would strap her to a log and dunk her in water for 10 minutes. And then using keen Talmudic reasoning, so if she died, well, she was a witch. She deserved to die. And if she lived, only a witch could survive 10 minutes underwater, so they would dunk her for 20. That was insane. And it was always women. I have a strong suspicion that the women who were accused of witchcraft, probably some guy got her pregnant and didn't want his wife to get in trouble, so he just accused her of being a witch and take her out of circulation. That's what I suspect. I mean, I've been to the mikveh. Some of these guys stay underwater. I mean, these guys could be setting Guinness Book records. They go underwater. Are you okay? And eventually the guy comes up. Eventually he's But that was the Torah talks about. We think of it in terms of women. It's prohibited for men as well. The Gemara, by the way, is full of witchcraft stories and witchcraft, how to ward off a spell, and remarkably, if somebody is connected to water, they are immune from a spell being cast on them. Like if you're in talk about like if they're standing in a lake or something. But water, and it's just interesting because in the Wizard of Oz, how does she kill her? With the water. Where did they get that from? Where would they get that idea? Of all things, why water? Why not marshmallow fluff? Where did they get water from? So I assume that whoever wrote The Wizard of Oz, I imagine there's some off the derech yeshiva guy was involved, and he just remembered one thing from his frum upbringing, something about witchcraft and water. Said, this is really cool. So they dumped it in, and then I'm melting. Where did that come from? It had to have come from somebody. Okay, whatever it is, what is witchcraft? What is witchcraft? What does it mean when the Torah talks about witchcraft? The supernatural witchcraft. What is there? Supernatural witchcraft. What is it? Now listen carefully. Witchcraft. What?
Necromancy? Or no?
No, the whole concept. What's the whole concept of witchcraft? How could you do something supernatural that brings about an effect? How can you do something like that? Where does that come from? So listen to what the definition of witchcraft is. Again, it's very, very basic level. Witchcraft 101. But this is the basic level, the basic definition brought down in the Sefer HaChinuch. Everything in the physical world, have you ever heard the idea that every blade of grass has a ministering angel that tells it to grow? Have you ever heard that concept? Okay. Rav Shraga Feivel Mendlowitz, by the way, who founded Torah V'das, he was once giving a shir to a bunch of Bachrim. They were sitting on the lawn. They were sitting on the lawn outside in the yeshiva. It was a nice day. And one of the Bachrim absent-mindedly ripped up a blade of grass. And Rav Shraga Feivel Mendlowitz turned to this Bachar. He said to him, there was a malach, there was an angel telling that blade of grass to grow, and you decided to tell him not to grow. He said, what are you absent-mindedly ripping up a blade of grass for? For what purpose? That was they trying to communicate. What does that mean? What does that mean? There's an angel. What do you think? They go, grow, grow, grow. It's like the fans at the ball game. Go, go, go. Grow, grow. What does that mean? That means that everything in the physical world has a spiritual counterpart. What we call a malach, an angel, but it's a spiritual counterpart. And witchcraft is the ability to tap into the higher forces and bring about an effect in the physical world. There are people with that ability, whether it's an innate ability, whether it's a ability that can be learned. Witchcraft means, according to the Sefer HaChinuch, tapping into the higher spiritual forces and somehow bringing about an effect in the physical world. But you can't do it. You can't do it. You're not allowed to do that. Which begs another question, which is, if you can't do it, why does God give people the ability to do it? Why is the ability there? What's the answer, obviously?
Sure.
What's that?
Sure.
Of course, it's a test. It's a test. People have different abilities. I've always felt that I would be very good at shoplifting. I think that I've got the ability. I think maybe I look innocent, and I, stitch in some big pockets, and to create a diversion. There are all sorts of ways. I think I'd be good at it, and I have an urge to do it too. Why are you laughing? I'm human, and pickpocketing especially. Now that I would really like to get into, because that I'm intrigued by. Just the whole idea of, one guy bumps into him and the other guy nips the wallet, and it just, I think I could be good at it. And even if I could be, and I have an urge to, so what? Suppress the urge. So you have the urge, so what? Oh, it becomes even more challenging. Let's say you're a great chef. Let's say you're a great chef. You've gone to chef school and you'd like to cook. You're into cooking, and you really like, but the only really high-class restaurants available are not kosher. You're not allowed to do that. You can't use that ability. How do you have to suppress that ability? Because it could be Jewish customers. It could be you're cooking the substances you're not allowed to. All sorts of problems. You have to suppress the ability, and then you're going to have to use your talents in a Jewish restaurant. Okay, roast chicken. What are you going to do? And half the things that half the ingredients you're not even going to be able to use because they're not kosher. You have to suppress. It's a challenge in life. Let's say a woman, here's a real challenge. A woman has a remarkable voice. She's got a great voice. And she'd like to sing. She'd like to sing on Broadway or opera or whatever it would be. And she's limited to singing in front of frum women. How'd you like that? Can you imagine Barbara Streisand if she was frum? Right? And she'd be limited to singing in front of frum women. That's pretty frustrating. So what? That becomes a challenge. That becomes a challenge. There are other challenges, by the way. There are women who are brilliant women. They're brilliant women, and they feel stifled by being mothers and wives. And they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant, intellectually brilliant. So there is room for the outlet. They could certainly study, and they could certainly, but they have a primary responsibility. A woman's home. There's a baby crying. That baby needs to be nursed. It's got to be nursed by one person only. And he's got to be fed and taken care of and nurtured and everything else. That's a challenge. What about a man who is not stimulated to study Torah? I'm not interested. He does not have any academic or intellectual drive whatsoever. Every man has it. We don't have to learn Torah all day. You don't have an obligation to be in kollel. But you have an obligation to study some Torah. But I'm not interested. So what? So you're going to have to force yourself. You have to. It's a challenge. I'm not interested, and so on and so forth. Everybody has abilities or interests which they may have to suppress. This is one of them. They got a natural talent, and the natural talent has to be suppressed. And that's very often in life. That's a very big test. That's a very big test. A guy says in the extreme case, people have various interests in immorality. I say, well, I have this drive. It's a natural drive that I have. Okay, well, a natural drive, you're going to have to suppress it. And it can only be used in a permissible way. That's also something that has to be suppressed. Like everything else, that's part of the challenge of Torah. But that's what witchcraft is. There are actually, the Gemara talks about what makes a person susceptible to witchcraft, to spells. The Gemara talks about Tanoim and Amoraim who warded off, who fought off witches and prevented themselves. It's discussed. There are different opinions whether it exists today or not. That means whether or not the authentic witchcraft still exists, there are different opinions among the commentaries. There are those who say that if you go out east, you go out to some of the eastern countries, and you'll see things that have a difficulty to explain them by natural law. Okay, it could be it exists, it could be it doesn't exist. I don't know. There are different opinions among the commentaries, but at one point it certainly existed. And then a person would have to suppress their talent. The thing that you can't do is there's a prohibition. Sleight of hand, if used for deceptive purposes, is prohibited. There's even a question about guys doing magic shows. Like there are from magicians who do magic shows, and obviously, so what the poskim say, I have a friend who performed as a magician, and what the poskim say is that they have to show the audience one or two tricks to show them they're not doing anything supernatural, how the trick works, then they could do the show. But all these, if you're doing it to deceive people, usually to make money, so that's prohibited. It's not a capital offense because it's not supernatural. You're just doing something, what's it called, sleight of hand or some sort of trick. What's the name of that guy? David Blaine. What? So what does he do? He's a mind guy. He's an illusionist. Okay, so he's just creating a. There's another guy. David Copperfield, maybe.
Oh yeah.
He made the Statue of Liberty disappear. You know, David Copperfield made the Statue of Liberty disappear. So what did he do? He took people into the New York harbor, and put them on a boat. And what he did was he closed the curtain, and he had the boat. This is pretty clever. I mean, it's he had the boat turn very slightly, very, very slowly and slightly, and then I don't know how much time, an hour or two later, they pulls back the curtain and there's no Statue of Liberty. It just shifted the direction of the boat. So all these things, everybody knows he's not really making the Statue of Liberty disappear. So I don't know that they all know there's a trick. They all know there's a trick. There's another guy in Israel he's on the El Al. He's on the El Al. The safety thing. He's pretty good, actually. Sushard. What's his name? I forgot his first name. It's something Sushard, right? So he does. Smokers, control yourselves. They do it in English and in Hebrew. So he's the El Al video.
It seems like the Torah is full of stories of people doing supernatural things, but that's not considered witchcraft.
Good. Where is that line between a miracle? Like if you look at Enoch, Eliyahu Hanavi, and Elisha, and Moshe Rabbeinu, it's not witchcraft. That's not witchcraft. That's a prophecy where he's given an ability by God to perform a miracle. That's not witchcraft. Whereas there's a fine line where you cross that line. Not only that, they were members of the Sanhedrin here to be up on witchcraft so they could judge witchcraft cases. They were allowed to study witchcraft because if a case comes to court and this guy's accused of being witchcraft, but how are you supposed to know if it's authentic witchcraft or not? They had to master that also in order to be able to judge the case. But that was only they're doing it for a constructive purpose. They couldn't do it to make their next door neighbor disappear. They could only do it. They had to use it. They had to use it in proper manner. Okay.
Bilam considered witchcraft?
Bilam was a sorcerer, who was doing witchcraft, which is why he was involved in bestiality. Because in order to, the same way that a person, look at the very next pasuk, gentlemen. Look at the very next pasuk. Kol shochevi behema mos yumas. Anybody who commits bestiality is liable for the death penalty. Now, what's that got to do with witchcraft? Why does that follow witchcraft? Somebody was asking me yesterday if there was in the other yeshiva, if the psukim follow each other, what's the rhyme and reason? The very next pasuk is anybody who sleeps with an animal, kol shochevi is a bestiality, is liable for a death penalty. So one of the Mefarshim says, what's the connection over here? The answer is, what does it say about Bilam? Bilam, who was a sorcerer, what was he involved with? He was involved with his donkey. What was the purpose of being involved? He wasn't just a pervert. It means the same way that if somebody wanted to get to the level of prophecy, what do you have to do? How do you become a Navi? How do you go to get a degree in prophecy? You major in either political science or prophecy. How do you become a Navi? The answer is that a person had to work on himself to perfect himself in the areas of Kedusha. The holier you became, the higher your level. Eventually, a person could rise in their level until they get to until they access prophecy. The opposite of prophecy is what we would call kochos hatuma, the impure spiritual powers. Well, if to get to the pure spiritual powers, you had to purify yourself. To access the impure powers, how did you do it? You had to make yourself as impure as possible. And the highest or lowest, kol shochef, bestiality is one of the lowest levels of impurity. So Bilam, there's no coincidence that he was involved with his donkey, and there's no coincidence that the Torah follows witchcraft with this prohibition, that don't get involved in this because one thing leads to the next, or it's used to lead to that. That's the idea. And that's what I told you. There's a method to this madness, right? There's rhyme and reason. Okay. Take a look at Pasuk Chaf. 4 lines from the top. V'ger lo sone v'lo silchatzano. A convert, you should not torment him or oppress him. Ki gerim ha'isam be'eretz Yisrael, because you yourselves were strangers. The word ger, which we call a convert, really means he was a stranger, and he joined up to the Jewish people. So the Torah says you're not allowed to torment the ger verbally. Don't mention his past. Say, listen, you were an idol worshiper. What do you do and put on tefillin? Don't say anything that's going to hurt the ger. First of all, we're worried that if you really torment him, he may abandon Judaism, and he can't, because once a guy or a convert, male or female, once they come up out of that mikveh, they're Jewish. They're as Jewish as you and me. And once they come out of that mikveh, they're Jewish, and they're Jewish forever. So a guy says, well, I'm quitting Judaism. You can't quit Judaism. There's no quitting once you're in. Either make up your mind. But once you're in, and then if we start tormenting a ger, and we start teasing him about his background, and the guy says, listen, what do I need this for? And then he may abandon the whole thing. So now you have a Jew who is sinning. So the Torah says you are not allowed to torment a ger verbally. Now this applies to all Jews. The Torah picks a ger, and we're going to see a widow and an orphan as well. The Torah picks the people who are most vulnerable. But you're not allowed to verbally abuse, what they call today verbal abuse. You're not allowed to, what's called in Hebrew, onoas dvarim. You're not allowed to torment anybody. That verbally, to hurt people verbally. And we see that sometimes people are hurt even more verbally than they are physically. And you can say something to somebody that lasts them for many years. Now, I'm just giving you a couple of examples because these are brought down as examples. One of the examples of verbal pain, causing verbal pain, is causing somebody worry. For example, somebody says his grandfather just had a minor heart attack. I said, really? I read that minor heart attacks are often followed by major heart attacks. Oh, thank you very much. I thank you for sharing that with me. What am I supposed to do with that information now other than worry? So you've caused him verbal pain, number one. Number two, insulting people, just straight out insulting people, calling people names. Number three, nicknames. A nickname is a very severe form of verbal torment, and if somebody has a nickname and he doesn't like it, and you call him by that nickname, so A, it's considered a transgression of onoas dvarim, number one. Number two, if he's embarrassed by it, then you're embarrassing somebody in public, and a person could lose his portion in the world to come for embarrassing somebody in public. And one of the very subtle forms of verbal pain, and this people are guilty of all the time, is if somebody buys something. Let's say a guy buys a new car. The guy just bought himself a new Toyota for $30,000, and he drives up with his new car. You say, well, how much did you pay? Well, $30,000. 30. My brother-in-law could have gotten you for $27,500. Now, what did you just do? You just ruined any possibility of him ever enjoying that car, if he's Jewish. You just ruined any possibility, and it's always, I see people do this all the time. How much did you pay for those shoes? I got them on Amazon, 150. They got those same shoes on sale down the block for $120. That sort of thing. And it does, when a person, you don't realize how cruel that is. Because then a person I walk somewhere, why did I do that for? That's all included in this prohibition. Then the Torah goes on to the next one. Kol almana v'yasom lo sa'anun. Don't torment a widow or an orphan. And again, the Torah is talking about people who are vulnerable. Im also, if you torment him, ki im tza'ok yitzak elai, if he yells out to me, shamoa eshma tza'akoso, I will hear his yell. Now, what's going to be the punishment of somebody who torments widows and orphans? V'chora api, I will get angry, says God. V'haragti eschem bechorev, I will kill you by the sword. V'hayu neshechem almanos u'v'nechem yisab. Your wives will be widows and your children will be orphans. Now, what does that mean? I mean, obviously, if a guy dies, his wife's a widow and his children are orphans. Why does the Torah repeat that? God says, I'll kill you and your wives are going to be widows, your children will be orphans. So Rashi brings down the Gemara that says that the person will die an unconfirmed death. And his wife will be left as a widow. She won't be able to remarry. And his children will be orphans because they won't have a father. And a guy right before he dies, and he's dying somewhere out in the desert where nobody knows he's dying, he has to die with that thought in his mind, which is a painful thought to go with, that his family is now going to suffer because of how he tormented other widows and orphans. So like in 9/11, when there was a guy who was trapped there, and the last thing he did was he called a Rav to say, I'm about to die, make sure you know I'm about to die, that my wife is not an aguna, which is a tremendous act of consideration. And that his children should have an opportunity to have to at least have a different father. Why does the Torah say a double terminology, though? If you notice in that entire pasuk, it says, Im ane se'anel, so if you double torment, ki im tza'ok yitzak elai, double, shamoa eshma tza'akaso. So I saw one of the Mefarshim says that a woman who's tormented, let's say somebody says something insensitive to a woman. So what does she normally do? She goes home and pours out her heart to her husband. So she has somebody to cry to. So there's only going to be one cry. And if he torments an orphan, so he'll go home and he'll cry to his father. So there's somebody to cry to. But here you're talking about people who have nobody to cry to. So what are they going to do? They're going to cry to Hashem. So, okay, it's like there can be two cries over here. One cry, in other words, a regular widow, there's only one cry. The cry is because of the actual insult. But then she'll unload it with her husband. So there's only going to be one cry. And the orphan as well. But a woman who has nobody to cry to, what's going to happen? There's the cry from the original pain. And then there's the cry because she doesn't have anybody else to cry out to. So she's going to cry to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So it's going to be double whammy. Double whammy. And that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, Shamoa Eshma. I'm going to hear it. The double hearing. I'm going to hear the original pain that you caused, and I'm also going to hear the cry because they have nobody else to cry to. And therefore, when it comes to widows and orphans, one has to be extremely, extremely careful. Extremely careful. You don't mess with a widow. A woman as a widow is vulnerable. One of the great rabbis once said, a woman, she's a widow, and the bus comes and she misses the bus and she starts crying because the bus, or she gets to the store and the store is closed when she gets there and she starts crying. When a widow is crying, she's crying because she's a widow. No matter what's happening, if she's crying, part of that crying is because she's a widow. And therefore, one has to be very, very careful. And the Gemara says a man has to be very careful not to make his own wife cry. You have to be very delicate with your wife, because a woman is very sensitive and she could easily cry. And if your own wife could cry, so imagine how vulnerable a widow is. One has to be very, very careful involved with a widow. You always back off. Same thing with the orphan. What's that? Crying for a wife is natural, therefore a man has to make sure to rise above nature.
But it still happens, no?
It still happens if you don't treat her well, yeah.
No, but if you do treat her well, I'm saying.
If you treat her well, if she cries, she's crying because of something else.
Right, okay, fine.
Okay, but don't be the shliach.